She paints flowers, nothing more. The Duke's sister said it loud enough for the whole room to hear. The Duke said nothing. Then he crossed the room, bought the painting for twice what it was worth, and told himself that was the end of it. It wasn't. Bath, October 1810. The Society of Arts has hung its autumn exhibition in the upper rooms of a building on Milsom Street that smells of linseed oil and ambition, and the opening evening has drawn exactly the crowd one would expect. People who care about art, people who care about being seen to care about art, and a handful who wandered in because the alternative was another evening at the pump room, listening to Mrs. Hathersage describe her gout. Cordelia Ashworth, no relation to anyone titled, a fact that Bath Society had established within a fortnight of her arrival, stood in front of her own work and tried not to look like she was standing in front of her own work. The painting was 2 feet wide and 18 inches tall. It was of a garden wall half collapsed, with a cascade of dog roses climbing over the ruin of it. There was a watering can on its side in the foreground, water still running from its mouth into the dirt. In the background, barely suggested, a woman's skirts were disappearing through a gate. Whether she was arriving or leaving was not clear. Cordelia had titled it After. She had a glass of something warm and sweet that she was not drinking. The room was loud with people performing their opinions, which was different from having them, and she had learned in 2 years of showing work in Bath that the safest position was slightly to the left of her own paintings, close enough to hear the remarks, far enough to deny she had heard them. "The roses are well executed," said a man to her left to the woman beside him. He had not looked at the painting for more than 4 seconds, though one wonders what she means by it. His companion tilted her head. She was young, dark-haired, dressed in blue that had cost someone a great deal. "One doesn't need to mean anything by roses." "Anna," so the man agreed, "precisely." Cordelia took a sip of her drink. "She's the merchant's daughter," the young woman said, quieter now, though the room had not grown quieter. "The one who's been showing here for 2 years. Flowers, landscapes, the odd interior. Pretty work." "Pretty," the man agreed again. He seemed to find agreement restful. "She paints flowers," the young woman said, and her voice carried the particular clarity of someone who has never needed to lower it. Nothing more. The room did not go silent. No one fainted. The chandelier did not flicker. Cordelia turned her glass slowly in her hand, examined the liquid in it, and did not look at the young woman in blue. Then a third voice, male, unhurried, "Philippa." A single word, not a reprimand, more like a man noting that a clock has chimed and he has already heard it. Cordelia looked up. He was standing just behind the young woman, Philippa, with a glass of his own that he also was not drinking. Tall, dark-coated, with the particular quality of stillness that very confident men develop when they have decided a room does not require their energy. He was looking at the painting. Not at Cordelia, at the painting. He looked for what she estimated was 30 seconds, which in an exhibition is a long time. Then he moved on to the next canvas without comment. Philippa followed him, still talking. Cordelia breathed out slowly through her nose. She knew who they were. Bath was a small city. The Duke of Charnwood had arrived 3 weeks ago with his sister, and a retinue that had caused the entire upper town to rearrange its social calendar. Nathaniel Cavendish, 32, unmarried, famously difficult to impress. His sister Philippa was 23 and engaged to a baronet in Wiltshire who had not yet arrived to claim her. Cordelia had not expected to meet either of them. She had not particularly wanted to. She looked back at her painting. Flowers, nothing more. She supposed the woman in the painting was her. She had not thought so when she painted it. By the end of the evening, Cordelia had sold 2 small studies. A set of peonies she'd painted in June, loose and quick, and a winter landscape of the hills above the city, to a Mrs. Pemberton, who collected local work with genuine enthusiasm and no pretension whatsoever, and who had known Cordelia's father before his death and considered the acquaintance sufficient to require no further social endorsement. "These are lovely, my dear," Mrs. Pemberton said, handing the studies to her footman. "The peonies especially. There's something in the light." "June light," Cordelia said. "It was a very good June." "It was dreadful. Rained for most of it." Mrs. Pemberton patted her arm. "But you've remembered it better than it was, and that's the point of art, isn't it?" She moved on. Cordelia smiled at her back. Across the room, the Duke of Charnwood was being introduced to the Society's chairman, a Mr. Graves, who had the expression of a man who had waited his entire professional life for exactly this moment. Philippa had acquired a small court of admirers and was holding court with visible ease. Cordelia began collecting her things. She had a portfolio of prints to take home, a hat she had set down somewhere and now could not find, and the nagging awareness that she had eaten nothing since midday. "Miss Ashworth." She turned. Nathaniel Cavendish was standing 3 feet away with a directness that suggested he had walked across the room with specific intent. Up close, he was less imposing than she'd expected, and more so, the stillness was not arrogance exactly. It was attention. He had turned it off in the room. He had turned it on now. "Your Grace," she said. "The painting," he said, "the one with the wall, is it sold?" She blinked. "No. I would like to purchase it." She looked at him for a moment. He looked back, and there was nothing in his expression she could read as apology or compensation. He had not apparently heard his sister's remark. Or he had heard it, and it had not altered his intention. She was not sure which was worse. "It is £40, she said. It was not. It was 25, which was already more than she had ever asked for a single work. She did not know why she said 40. "I will send my man to arrange it tomorrow morning," he said. "Good evening, Miss Ashworth." He walked back to his sister. Cordelia found her hat under the exhibition table, put it on and walked home in the dark. And it was not until she was inside with the door shut that she sat down and thought about the fact that a duke had just paid £40 for a painting of dog roses. She also thought about the fact that he had not apologized for Philippa. She was not sure she wanted him to. The arrangement arrived as promised, a correct letter from a Mr. Simmons, the Duke's man of business, requesting that the painting be sent to Charnwood's rented house on the Royal Crescent at her earliest convenience, with a note that he would send a man and a cart at whatever hour she preferred. The £40 was enclosed, actual currency folded into an envelope. She had not expected it so fast. She sat at the breakfast table and looked at the money. It meant her quarter's rent. It meant new canvas for the winter. It meant her mother, who had begun to say things about the practicality of Cordelia's profession in the careful way she said things that she meant very directly, would stop saying them for at least 3 months. She folded the money back into the envelope, ate her toast, and wrote a reply to Mr. Simmons that the painting would be ready for collection Thursday. The cart came Thursday morning as arranged. Cordelia walked up to the Royal Crescent herself, not carrying the painting which had gone ahead, because she wanted to be certain it had arrived without damage, and because she was not ready to examine the other reason too closely. The butler received her with the specific expression of a man managing a situation he had not been briefed on. He showed her to a small sitting room and went to find Mr. Simmons. Mr. Simmons did not come. Nathaniel Cavendish did. He was in morning dress, no coat, and he looked exactly as composed as he had the night before, which struck her as unfair. "Miss Ashworth." He looked at the wrapped painting already propped against the table. "You came yourself." "I wanted to make certain it arrived without damage," she said. "Of course." He did not say anything else about it. "Shall I?" He gestured at the painting. She unwrapped it because that was why she was here. The dog roses appeared, the collapsed wall, the watering can still pouring, the woman's skirts going through the gate. He looked at it for a while. "Where did you paint it?" he said. "A garden in the lower town. It belonged to an old man who let me come and paint in it whenever I wanted. He died in August." She paused. "The new owner has a plan for the wall." Nathaniel looked up from the painting. "What kind of plan?" "The rebuilding kind." He looked back at the painting. "Then you've done it a service." Cordelia did not expect this. It was exactly the right thing to say, and she had not expected him to say it. She nodded once and began refolding the cloth. "My sister," he said. She went still. "She says what she thinks," he said, without always thinking what she says. "Your Grace," Cordelia said, "your sister's opinion of my work is her own. I did not come here for an apology." "I am not apologizing," he said. "I am explaining." "There is," she said pleasantly, "very little difference." He looked at her then with an expression she couldn't quite name. Surprised and not surprised at all, which she wasn't sure was a possible combination until she saw it. "Enjoy the painting," she said, and left. She walked home very fast, and was still working out whether she was pleased with herself or horrified when she got through the door, and her mother said from the parlour, "Was that satisfactory, Cordelia?" And she said, "Perfectly, Mamma," and went upstairs. Bath in October had a particular rhythm. The mornings were for the pump room, where people drank water that tasted of minerals and futures. The afternoons were for calls, cards, and the management of opinion. The evenings were for the assembly rooms, where everything arranged in the morning was either confirmed or destroyed. Cordelia was present at all three. Her family's connections, her late father had done business with half the professional class of Somerset, gave her entree to the rooms where things happened, even if her position in those rooms was not quite at the centre. She knew this and had stopped minding it. The margins had a better view. She next encountered Nathaniel Cavendish 4 days after the delivery. He was at the pump room, standing by the windows in the manner of a man who has drunk his required glass of water and is now simply waiting for a socially acceptable moment to leave. She was sketching. She did this in the pump room sometimes, small studies, quick ones. She had a small leather notebook and a stick of graphite, and she was drawing the windows because the light through them on a cold morning was extraordinary, and she wanted to remember it. "You are drawing the windows," Nathaniel said, "and not the people." He was standing beside her. He had not been standing beside her a moment ago. "The people move," she said without looking up. "And the windows don't. The light does. I have approximately 6 minutes before it shifts." She turned the page and started a new study, faster. "Is there something you needed, Your Grace, or are you in the habit of observing people who are working?" "I was going to leave," he said, "but now I find myself curious." She glanced at him briefly. He was, she noted, not performing curiosity. He looked genuinely interested, which was somehow more inconvenient. "Mrs. Fitzwilliam's hat," Cordelia said, "will be the same tomorrow. This light will not." He was quiet for a moment. She finished the study, closed the notebook. "You are not what I expected," he said. She looked up at him fully. "What did you expect?" He considered the question, which suggested he took it seriously. "Someone quieter," he said. "You've spoken to me twice," she said. "Both times I was provoked." The corner of his mouth moved. £40, he said, was not a provocation. "No," she agreed, "that was a surprise." She put the notebook in her coat pocket. "Did you hang the painting?" "In the study." She nodded. "Good." Studies were private rooms. People put things in studies that they actually wanted to look at, not things that were required to be seen. "Good morning, Your Grace," she said. "Miss Ashworth," he said. She walked to the other side of the room and spent the next hour trying to think about light and thinking about something else entirely. The assembly rooms that Thursday were crowded enough that Cordelia could spend the first hour circulating at will without anyone tracking her movements. She danced twice, once with Mr. Graves's son, who was amiable and had 3 left feet, and once with a Mr. Hanford, who was a solicitor and an excellent dancer, and who she liked well enough to have allowed 2 dances, except that 2 dances meant something she did not want it to mean. She was standing with her friend Lucy Davenport between sets when Philippa Cavendish sailed past with the baronet, who had evidently arrived from Wiltshire. Philippa looked at Cordelia with the bright, blank look of someone who has classified a person and moved on. Cordelia looked back with an expression she had spent some years perfecting that conveyed absolutely nothing. "She looks expensive," Lucy said, watching Philippa go. "She is," Cordelia said, "her pelisse alone." "And the brother," Lucy said. "Twice," Cordelia said. "He bought the large one, the wall and the roses." £40, Lucy said. "Has he been to your studio?" "Certainly not." "Interesting," Lucy said in the tone she used when she meant the opposite. "It is not interesting," Cordelia said. "He bought a painting. People buy paintings." "Dukes," Lucy said, "do not generally cross a crowded room at the pump room to discuss their purchase with the artist." Cordelia opened her mouth, and then Nathaniel Cavendish was in front of them both, having appeared from the direction of the card room with 2 other gentlemen who peeled off immediately to find their own targets. "Miss Ashworth," he said, "Miss Davenport." He knew Lucy's name. She hadn't told him Lucy's name, he'd found it out. Cordelia registered this and filed it. "Your Grace," Lucy said with more warmth than strictly necessary, "are you dancing this evening?" "I had not planned to." "Then you should," Lucy said pleasantly. "It is a very good orchestra." This was a lie. It was an adequate orchestra, and Nathaniel seemed to know it because he looked at Lucy with something that was very nearly amusement. "The third set," Lucy said, and looked at Cordelia. Cordelia looked at Lucy with an expression that said very clearly, "I will remember this." Lucy's expression said equally clearly, "You are welcome." "Miss Ashworth," Nathaniel said, "not quite a question." She could decline. But Lucy was watching her with enormous innocence, and it seemed tiresome to make a point out of it when she could simply dance. "Thank you," she said. He was a very good dancer. He danced with the contained energy of someone who has done it since childhood, but has stopped performing it, which gave the whole thing the quality of a real conversation rather than a social exercise. The second figure brought them face to face. "Tell me about the painting you're working on," he said. She looked at him. "Who said I was working on anything?" "You were sketching the windows at 7 in the morning. What is that, if not research?" "An empty room," she said when they came back together after a turn. "I want to paint a room just after something has happened in it. The room itself shows what it was." He was quiet through another figure. "That is not flowers," he said when they returned to each other. She felt it land, kept her face even. "No. Is it what you prefer to paint?" "I paint what comes to me," she said. "The flowers come easily, the others take longer." "The one I bought," he said. "Was that easy or long?" "Both," she said. "The roses were 2 days, the rest was 3 weeks." He nodded as if this confirmed something. The music resolved. He brought her back to her place, bowed, and she curtsied, and his hand was warm when she took it, and she let it go before the music had entirely finished. She went back to Lucy, who looked as innocent as a woman who had just engineered something precise could look. "Well," Lucy said. "Not a word," Cordelia said. She painted that week with a focus she hadn't had since the previous spring. On the 4th day, she came home from her studio, a rented room on the first floor of a building 2 streets from the Circus, north-facing, which she paid for out of her sales, to find a card on the table by the door. "Nathaniel Cavendish, Duke of Charnwood." No message, just the card. She picked it up and looked at it. Then she set it exactly back where she'd found it and went to wash the paint from her hands. He called the next morning correctly at 11 and was received in the small parlour where her mother sat with her embroidery and the correct expression of civil welcome. Cordelia came downstairs and found him standing by the bookshelf with a book in his hand. "The Cowper," she said from the doorway. "3rd shelf, left side. The other 2 are my mother's, and she marks her place with hairpins." He found the Cowper and opened it. "You know your bookshelves by which contain hairpins." "It is a reliable system." She came into the room. Her mother had taken her embroidery somewhere else with the subtlety of a woman who is perfectly aware of what she is doing. "You left a card yesterday." "I came to see if you would show me the studio," he said. "The room you're renting." She looked at him. "I know what a studio is, Your Grace," she said. "The question is whether you have the right to ask." He did not flinch. Someone who bought a painting because of how it was made would want to see where paintings are made. That was, she admitted privately, a reasonable answer. "Thursday," she said. "Come at 2. My landlady will be present in the building." He nodded, stayed exactly 20 minutes more, talking about a book on the Dutch masters he had read and being wrong about 2 things, which she told him, and he conceded both, which she found unexpectedly satisfying, and left. Her mother reappeared from wherever she had been and said, "Well," in the exact tone Lucy had used. "It is not what you think," Cordelia said. "What do I think?" her mother said, sitting down with an expression of complete serenity. Cordelia did not answer. Thursday. She had not tidied the studio because it was her studio, and this was a decision she remained confident in right up until he looked at it with the quiet attention he brought to everything. Canvases were stacked 3 deep against every wall. The work table was covered in brushes, rags, glass jars of paint water. The interior study was on the easel, 3/4 done, the late October light laid across an empty floor. There were sketches pinned above the table, the window studies from the pump room, a dozen others. He looked at all of it methodically. "These are not the same as the paintings," he said, looking at the pinned sketches. "Studies are notes, they're freer." "Why?" "Because when I'm making a study, I am not afraid of it." She had not meant to say it quite so directly. "And when you paint something you care about, I'm afraid of ruining it. It passes. By the 3rd day, I've stopped being afraid and started being angry, and anger is more productive." He turned away from the sketches and looked at her, not at the work, at her. "My sister," he said, and stopped. "Your Grace," she said. "She said something at the exhibition. I did not hear it at the time." "But you heard it after?" "Yes." Cordelia looked at the open door in the painting on the easel, the one that didn't know yet if it was coming or going. "And yet you bought the painting before you heard it," she said. "So it is not an apology that led you here." No, he said. Then I don't require one. She said what she thought. You can't amend what she thinks. I could correct it publicly. Please don't. I would rather she were wrong and quiet about it than wrong and corrected by her brother in someone's drawing room. She picked up a brush. I will correct it myself. He looked at her for a moment with that expression, surprised and not surprised at all, and said, I believe you. And it was the most complete sentence anyone had said to her in recent memory. He came back the following Thursday, and the one after. She didn't invite him again. He simply appeared at 2 o'clock, and she carried on painting, and he asked questions or didn't, and she answered them or didn't, and it was the most efficient arrangement she had ever fallen into with another person. Her landlady moved about the floors below, in the reassuring manner of a woman who knows her purpose. He knew a great deal about art for someone who claimed only to admire it. He had been to the Low Countries and seen the Dutch masters in person, which she had not, and could describe the quality of light in those rooms with the accuracy of someone with a good visual memory. In the Mauritshuis, she said one Thursday, is there really as much silence as people say in the room with the de hooch? There is, he said. People lower their voices without being asked. Because they feel unworthy of it or because they're moved? Both, he said, though I suspect the second produces the first, not the other way around. She looked at the interior study, nearly finished. The light across the empty floor, exactly what she'd been reaching for. I wonder if a painting should make a person feel smaller, she said, or larger. Can it do both? Not at the same time. He was quiet. The one I bought, he said, does both. She looked at him. He was looking at the door in the study on the wall, the one that didn't know yet if it was opening or closing. Thank you, she said, and meant it entirely, and he heard that she meant it, and they stood on opposite sides of her studio, and it cost them something, the standing there. The Bath Society of Arts had a policy of forwarding distinguished work to the attention of the Royal Academy in London, with a recommendation letter from the chairman. Mr. Graves had told Cordelia this in September, in the tone of a man explaining a lottery to someone he does not expect to win it. She had set it aside. The Academy was London, which was another country from Bath in the ways that mattered. She painted gardens and windows and empty rooms. She was the merchant's daughter from Bath who painted flowers. Nothing more. She was cleaning brushes after the third Thursday, when Lucy came to the studio with a paper bag of biscuits, and the look she wore when she had something to say that she had been not saying. He is interested, Lucy said, in you. He is interested in the work. Cordelia. Lucy set down the bag. I watched you talk about the pump room windows for 6 minutes at dinner last week. 6 minutes. And the conversation was not about light. Cordelia set down the brush she was cleaning. He is a duke, she said. I'm aware. His sister thinks I paint flowers, nothing more. His sister, Lucy said, is not the one who has come to your studio 3 Thursdays in a row. She ate a biscuit. He's not looking at the paintings, Cordelia. He's looking at you while you look at the paintings. Cordelia looked at the interior study on the easel, the door in the background open, undecided, coming or going. I know, she said. The interior study was finished on a Monday in November, in the early afternoon. She knew it was done the way she always knew. She stopped being afraid of it. She stood back from the canvas and felt nothing but a clean, specific satisfaction, like a key turning in a lock. She titled it Interior with Open Door, and hated the title immediately and kept it because she couldn't think of anything better. That Thursday, she turned the easel to face the door before he arrived. He stopped when he saw it. She watched his face with the attention she gave to paintings, and she saw the thing that happens when a person encounters something that surprises them past their own defenses. A fractional loss of composure, very quick, and then the composure returning, but not entirely back to where it had been. It's done, he said. Monday. He walked toward it and stopped at the correct distance. He looked for 3 minutes. She had counted him at 30 seconds in front of the exhibition painting. This was 3 minutes. The door, he said. I know. You decided. It decided, she said. I keep telling you. He looked at her. His eyes were quite steady, and she was glad she was standing by the window with the light behind her. This should be at the Academy, he said. She felt the sentence land with the weight of something she had already thought and not let herself say. The Academy shows history paintings, she said, portraits of cabinet ministers. The Academy, he said, shows the best work of the year. Cordelia, he said. She went still. He had used her name. deliberately, precisely as if he had decided to use it and was prepared to own the decision. "Nathaniel," she said in exactly the same register. They looked at each other across her studio, the finished painting between them, the door in it undecided and decided at once. "Send it," he said. "Mr. Graves has already submitted his recommendation for the season. The window is closed." "There are other windows," he paused. "Let me find one." "What does that mean?" "That means I know people at the academy," he said. "I know you do," she said. "The question is what you would say to them. That there is a painting in Bath that should be seen." She put her hands in her pockets. The linseed oil smell of the studio, which she usually didn't notice, was very present. "You would put your name to it." "I would." "Why?" He looked at the painting. "Because it should be seen, and because I would like you to be right about something that I have watched you doubt yourself about for 6 weeks." "I haven't doubted it," she said. "I doubted whether it was for them." "Let them doubt that," he said. "That's their job." "I will think about it," she said. She thought about it for 3 days. On the third morning she walked to the pump room and found Philippa Cavendish there with her set and the Wiltshire baronet. Philippa saw Cordelia. Cordelia nodded, small, correct. Philippa turned back to her companions. In the old days, by which Cordelia meant 4 weeks ago, this would have settled something in her, a small sting. Today, it sharpened her. She walked home and sat at the writing table and picked up a pen. "Dear Mr. Graves, I write to inquire whether a supplementary submission to the Royal Academy might be accommodated outside the usual season, in light of a work completed since the October exhibition." She stopped, then added, "I have reason to believe there may be support for such a submission from an unexpected quarter, and I would value your guidance on the appropriate approach." She sealed it and had it delivered. Mr. Graves responded the same afternoon. He would be happy to discuss the matter. Could she come Thursday at 3? She replied yes. She also wrote a note to Nathaniel, folded once, no wax. "I am going to submit. I haven't asked for your help yet. I am telling you I haven't asked for it because I want you to know I am doing it myself first. If it needs help after that, I will tell you." His response came before noon. "Understood. Good." 2 words. She read them 3 times and found them entirely satisfying. She met Mr. Graves at the society rooms on Thursday, and he looked at interior with open door, with the expression of a man who has been doing this long enough to know when something is good and who does not always enjoy knowing it. "It's not flowers," he said. "No," she said, "it is not. The Academy's submission window is closed for this season, as you know." He walked around the painting. "However, there is a letter." He handed it to her. It was from the Secretary of the Royal Academy. It referred to a previous correspondence, a letter from an unnamed party, which had drawn attention to the work of a Bath-based artist working in the tradition of interior study and natural subject. The Secretary wrote that the Academy would be prepared to receive 1 or 2 works for consideration outside the usual season, as an exception, provided the quality warranted it. Cordelia read it twice. The unnamed party, a previous correspondence. She looked up at Mr. Graves. "Do you know who wrote to them?" she said. "The letter did not say," Mr. Graves said, with the look of a man who did know and had decided to be very precise about what he'd been told. She put the letter down. "Send both paintings," she said. "This one and the exhibition piece." "Both?" "If they're going to look," she said, "let them look." She did not go to Nathaniel that Thursday. She sat in her studio and looked at the space where the interior study had been, and thought. He had written to the Academy. He had done it before she'd decided to submit, before their conversation in the studio, before she'd said, "I will think about it." He had written anonymously during the Thursdays, during the conversations about Dutch light and what a painting should do to a person. He had believed in it before she had asked him to, and he had acted on that belief without telling her. She was not nothing about it. She was a very specific kind of not grateful, a woman who had spent 2 years being told in various ways that what she made was not quite enough, finding out that the first door that had opened for her had been opened by someone else. And also, a woman who knew with the honesty she owed herself that the painting was good and would have found its way eventually, but eventually was a long, cold country, and she had been living in it for 2 years. And also, that he had believed in it before she had asked him to. She sat with all 3 of these things. The north light came in and moved and changed, and she watched it and tried to think clearly. The Academy's response came in the second week of December. Both works had been received and would be considered for a special exhibition of exceptional regional work to be held in March. Bath knew within 48 hours. Cordelia was at the pump room on a Tuesday morning when the news arrived in the form of Mrs. Pemberton, who had heard from someone who had heard from Mr. Graves's wife. "The Academy," Mrs. Pemberton said. "Yes," Cordelia said. "Both paintings?" "Yes." "My dear," Mrs. Pemberton took her hand and pressed it warmly, "your father would have been exceedingly pleased." Cordelia looked at the windows. The winter light was flat and extraordinary. "I know," she said. Across the room, Philippa Cavendish was standing with her baronet, looking at Cordelia with an expression that was not the blank social nod of last week. It was a recalibration, a woman doing arithmetic she had not expected to need to do. Nathaniel was not in the room. He called that afternoon. Her mother sent him to the small parlour, and when Cordelia came in he turned, and he had the quality of a man who knows something is coming and has decided to be still for it. "December," she said. "I heard this morning," he said. "You heard from Mr. Graves," she said, "or you knew earlier?" He was quiet. "The secretary's letter mentioned a previous correspondence," she said, "an unnamed party, who wrote before I had decided to submit." "Yes," he said. "Why didn't you tell me?" He looked at the window. "Because at the point I wrote you hadn't told me anything. I had no authority to interfere, and I interfered anyway. You knew I would find out. I assumed you would. I thought by then you would have read the secretary's letter and submitted the work yourself, and the question of whether I had helped would be secondary to the fact that the paintings were in London." She looked at him. "That is a very convenient assumption." "I know," he said. "It is also," she said, "not entirely wrong." He looked at her. She looked at him. "I am angry," she said. "I know," he said. "I want to have done this without you," she said. "I wanted to be able to say I did." "I know, I'm sorry. I wanted the painting to be seen. I could make that happen, and you could not yet, and I thought—" "You thought you knew better?" "Yes," he said. "I was not wrong about the painting. I was wrong to act without telling you." "You were wrong," she said. "Yes." She sat down. He remained standing. "When I come back from London," she said, "I will want to talk about this further." "Of course," he said. She looked up at him. He was watching her with an expression that had nothing in it she could fault, except that it was quite openly more than the expression of a man who had bought a painting. "Nathaniel," she said. He waited. "Thank you," she said. "I hate that I'm saying it. Say nothing." He said nothing, but the corner of his mouth moved just once, and she looked away before it could become anything further, and they sat in the flat light of the December parlour until her mother came in with tea, and the conversation became about other things. And they let it. London in March was a different species of city from Bath. Bath was a drawing room. London was a house on fire, elegant and enormous, and everyone in it was moving very fast and calling it composure. Mr. Graves came with her, which she had not requested but was grateful for. He knew the Academy's staff and the rhythms of the building, and he walked beside her up the steps of Somerset House with the look of a man who has arranged something good and is entitled to some satisfaction about it. The secretary, a Mr. Fellows, was waiting inside. Small, neat, extremely quick, the kind of man who formed opinions before you'd finished speaking and revised them only under significant pressure. "Miss Ashworth," he said, with the warmth of a man who has seen her work and is pleased about it, "we are very glad you could come." They walked her through the gallery where the March exhibition was hung. The room was lit from skylights, even, clean, the kind of light that made everything look exactly as it was. Her two paintings were hung together on the east wall. After, with the dog roses and the collapsed wall and the watering can still pouring, and beside it, interior with open door. She stood in front of them and did not speak for some time. She had not seen them for weeks. They looked different on the Academy's walls than they had in Bath. They looked, she searched for the word, capable, as if they knew where they were. "The interior piece is exceptional," Mr. Fellows said. "The handling of light is quite unlike anything we've received from outside London in some years." She turned to look at him. He meant it. She could tell the difference. "The other one," he said, nodding at After, "is what made me write back. The party who wrote to us, your advocate, described it as the painting that made him understand what the interior would eventually be. He was not wrong." "The party who wrote to us." "He described the exhibition piece first," she said. At some length, with considerable technical observation, the kind that comes from spending time in front of a work. He paused. We don't often receive letters of that quality. Most are social recommendations dressed as aesthetic ones. This was the reverse. She looked at after. The dog roses, the wall, the woman's skirts going through the gate. The painting that made him understand what the interior would eventually be. He had seen both. He had understood what she was doing before she'd finished doing it. He had been paying attention, not in the manner of a man watching a woman he admires, but in the manner of a man genuinely trying to understand something. And then he had written to London and described it with enough precision that a stranger reading the letter understood. She stood in the gallery until Mr. Graves made the gentle sounds of a man who is needed elsewhere, and then she gathered herself, thanked Mr. Fellows, and walked back out into the London morning. The private viewing was that evening. She wore her one good London dress, deep green, simply cut, with her mother's pearl earrings, borrowed against her mother's protestations that pearls were for married women. She knew no one. Mr. Graves was quickly absorbed into conversations she was not part of, which left her to navigate alone, which she did not mind. She had been navigating alone for years. She took a glass of wine and stood near her paintings at the angle she'd perfected, close enough to hear, far enough to deny. A couple she did not know stood in front of Interior with open door for 4 minutes. A man she would later learn was a critic looked at after and said to his companion, "There's something in it." An elderly woman in black said loudly to no one in particular, "The light in that interior, who is she?" "I am she," Cordelia thought, did not say it, sipped her wine. She felt the shift that large rooms produce when a significant arrival occurs, a reorientation of attention. She turned. Nathaniel was in the doorway. He had not told her he was coming. He was in evening dress, completely composed, paying attention. His eyes found her across the room, as if he had known exactly where she would be standing. He walked toward her. "You didn't tell me you were coming," she said when he reached her. "So you didn't tell me you didn't want me to," he said. "How long have you been in London?" "I arrived this afternoon." He looked at the paintings and then at her. "How was the morning visit?" "Mr. Fellows told me that the party who wrote the letter described the exhibition piece as the painting that made him understand what the interior would eventually be." Nathaniel looked at the wall where After hung. "Is that an accurate description?" "You tell me." "Yes," he said. "When I bought the first one, I didn't know the second existed. When I saw the second before it was finished, I understood what the first had been reaching toward." That is quite a precise observation for a man who claims only to admire paintings. I never claimed only to admire them. The gallery was full of noise and movement and light, and she was having a conversation with the Duke of Charnwood in front of her own paintings at the Royal Academy, and her hands were entirely steady, which surprised her. "You wrote a very good letter," she said. "I wrote an honest one." "You should have told me." "Yes," he said, "I should have. I want to be angry about it." "You are angry about it," he said. "You're simply also in London, and your paintings are on that wall, and the two things are happening at the same time." She looked at the paintings, After and Interior with open door, side by side, the candlelight making the dog roses glow. "She paints flowers," she said. He turned to look at her. "Nothing more," she said, and the way she said it, dry, deliberate, the phrase turned completely inside out, made the corner of his mouth move. "Fellows used the word exceptional," Nathaniel said. He did. Was he right? She looked at her paintings. "Ask me in a year," she said, "when I've made something better." He laughed. A real laugh, quiet and unguarded, and it was the first time she had heard it fully, and it was a very good laugh, and she looked away before it could do anything to her expression. Mr. Fellows appeared at her side with a collector in tow, a Lord Harrington with a particular interest in the interior piece, and she turned to him and did not look back at Nathaniel for 20 minutes, because she needed 20 minutes to settle whatever had just happened in her chest. When she looked back, Nathaniel was on the far side of the room and he was not looking at her, and she thought, he is giving me space deliberately. And then she thought, he knows when to give people space. And then she thought, this is a problem. The problem was that she was in love with him. She had been, she now understood, for some weeks. Since the Thursday when he'd said, "The painting knows things before I do," back to her like a man who had filed the information and was now returning it precisely. Since the day in the parlor when she'd said, "I am angry," and he'd said, "I know," and not moved an inch. She sat with this in her room at the lodging house on Bedford Street, with her good green dress over the chair and her mother's pearls in her hand. She was in love with him. He was a duke. She was a merchant's daughter from Bath who had just put 2 paintings on the wall of the Royal Academy, which was the best thing she had done and which would not, in the accounting of the world he lived in, fully close the distance between them. His sister had said, "She paints flowers, nothing more." His sister would not be the last person to say it. And yet, he had come to London. He had found her across a crowded gallery in the first 10 seconds. He had laughed. She put the pearls down on the nightstand and thought, well, there it is. He called the next morning before she'd finished breakfast. She came downstairs and found him in the small lodging-house parlour, standing by the window. "Good morning," she said. "Good morning," he looked at her. "I should like to take you somewhere. I have 3 calls this afternoon." "This morning," he said, "before your calls." She looked at him and thought, I am in love with this man and he is standing here wanting to take me somewhere, and I am calculating whether my dress is suitable. "Where?" she said. "You said you had never seen the Dutch masters in person," he said. "There is a collection 15 minutes from here." She put down her tea. The collection was in a private house on Wimpole Street, belonging to a friend of Nathaniel's who was not in residence. This struck her as the kind of arrangement available only to people who had spent their whole lives in a world where such arrangements were available, and she noted it and set it aside because they were standing in a room full of Dutch paintings, and she had stopped caring about everything else. 4 paintings by De Hooch and Metsu, and in the far corner 2 by an artist whose name the small accompanying card gave as Jan Vermeer van Delft. Not yet widely known, not yet celebrated, but extraordinary. A woman reading a letter by a window, the light from the window on her face. She stood in front of it for a long time. "The silence," Cordelia said. "You were right." "I usually am," Nathaniel said from behind her. She glanced at him over her shoulder. He was smiling, not the contained, almost smile he produced in drawing rooms, but an actual unguarded smile he seemed not to be monitoring. "Don't be insufferable," she said. "I am allowed a small amount of self-satisfaction," he said. "A small amount," she agreed, and turned back to the woman with the letter. They moved through the room the way they moved through her studio, separately but in relation to each other. She would stop. He would come to stand beside her. He would move on first, and she would follow when she was ready, and when she arrived at the next painting, he would already be watching her rather than the painting. She noticed this with the peripheral attention she gave to things she was not ready to address directly. At the last painting, a street scene, cooler in tone, she said without turning, "Why did you come to the gallery last night?" "I wanted to see how you were," he said. She turned. He was closer than she'd calculated. "Nathaniel," she said. "Cordelia," he said. "I am going to say something, and I would like you to let me say all of it before you respond." "Of course." "I am angry about the letter," she said. "Still, it was a kindness, and it was also a presumption, as if you knew what I needed before I did." "Yes," he said. "And I have been thinking about why it made me angry differently than it would have if Mr. Graves had done it, or Lucy, or anyone else." She stopped, looked at the Dutch street, looked back at him. "And I have concluded that it made me angry differently because you are not anyone else. To me." The room was quiet. "No," he said, "nor are you." She let out a breath. "Well," she said. "Well?" he said. He took one step toward her and she did not step back, and he raised his hand and touched her face, just his thumb briefly against her cheekbone, and she turned her face into it without deciding to. "I have been," he said very quietly, "trying to find the correct pace for this." "You have been very slow," she said. He laughed, the real one, and she felt it in her sternum. He bent his head and kissed her, which was not slow at all, careful and certain and entirely deliberate, and she kissed him back, and the Dutch paintings hung around them in their northern light, and the room maintained its appropriate silence. She made all 3 of her afternoon calls. She was, she found, entirely capable of sitting in London, drawing rooms and discussing the Academy exhibition and Mrs. Such-and-Such's daughter, while internally in a state of complete revolution. Lucy had written from Bath. The news had reached her already, and the letter said only, "Well?" Cordelia sat down that evening and wrote, "I will tell you everything when I am home. Bring the biscuits." Nathaniel dined with her the following evening, a correct arrangement with Mr. Graves present as adequate company. And twice she looked at him across the table, and he looked back, and something passed between them that Mr. Graves either did not notice or was too well-bred to acknowledge. After dinner, he walked with her as far as the door of the lodging-house. "I am going back to Bath on Thursday," she said. "I know, I am going on Friday." She looked at the door. "There will be a great deal of talk." "People have already noticed," he said. "Mrs. Pemberton noticed in October." She stared at him. "Mrs. Pemberton noticed in October?" "She said to me at the pump room that I had excellent taste in painting and that she hoped I would continue to develop it." He paused. She was very clear about what she meant. Cordelia put her hand over her face briefly. "That woman," she said. "She's right," he said. She lowered her hand. He was smiling. "My sister," he said, and the tone shifted, "will say things." "Yes," Cordelia said, "she will." "I want to be clear. I will not manage her at your expense. If she cannot reconcile herself to this, that is her difficulty, not yours to accommodate." "She may come round," Cordelia said. "She may not," he said. "It doesn't change what I want." She thought about the woman's skirts going through the gate in after. Arriving or leaving, she still didn't know. "Good night, Nathaniel," she said. "Good night." He held her hand for a moment, warm, certain, and then let it go, and she went inside. Bath received the news of the academy acceptance with enormous enthusiasm, immediately, and in every room simultaneously. Lucy appeared at Cordelia's elbow in the pump room on Friday morning, at the earliest possible moment, and steered her to the windows. "Tell me everything," Lucy said. "He came to London," Cordelia said. "He took me to see the Dutch collection on Wimpole Street. We kissed, in front of a painting. He kissed me, or I kissed him. It was mutual." Lucy pressed her lips together against a smile. "And then?" "3 calls. Dinner with Mr. Graves. He comes back tomorrow." "He's coming back to Bath." "On Friday, yes." "He lives 3 streets from you," Lucy said. "Cordelia." She took both her hands. "He came to London. He took you to see the Dutch masters. He is coming back. Are you frightened?" "Not of him," she said. "Of the size of it. He is a duke. I have just had 2 paintings accepted by the Academy, which is the best thing I have done, and which will not entirely compensate for the fact that I am a merchant's daughter who paints flowers." "Nothing more," Lucy said. Cordelia looked at her. "That is what you were going to say," Lucy said. "Philippa's words, but also the world's words. Does he understand what he's asking?" "I think he understands it better than I do," Cordelia said. "He lives in that world from the inside, and he's still coming back on Friday." Lucy squeezed her hands. "Then stop calling it the size of it," she said, "and let it be what it is." He came back on Friday as stated. He called on Saturday, correctly at 11, and was received by her mother, who had the expression of a woman who has been hoping for exactly this, and is exercising considerable restraint about it. Cordelia came downstairs to find him standing in the centre of the room, with the quality of a man who has decided to be direct, and is preparing to be so. "Good morning," she said. "Good morning. I would like to speak to your mother." She looked at him. "You have been speaking to my mother?" "Formally," he said, "about a formal matter." Her mother, on the sofa, had the expression of a woman who is not going to help her daughter's composure, and considers this her right. "You might," Cordelia said carefully, "ask me first." "I am asking your mother for the opportunity to ask you," he said. "They are 2 different conversations. That is a very structured approach." "I am a structured person," he said. She looked at him and saw in his expression the thing she had been trying to name since October, the surprised and the not surprised, and she thought, "It is certainty." A man who has made up his mind and cannot quite believe it took him this long. "Would you like to walk in the gardens?" she said. "I would," he said. The Sydney gardens were bare and cold and extremely beautiful, in the way that bare cold things are when the light is right, and the light on Saturday morning was the flat, clear kind she associated with truth. They walked for a few minutes without speaking. "I have been working out how to say this without being clumsy about it," he said. "You are generally not clumsy," she said. "I am going to be clumsy about this," he said, "because I care about it too much to be precise. My sister said, at the exhibition, that you paint flowers, nothing more." He paused. "I heard that when she said it, and I thought, she is wrong, and that was before I'd spoken to you. It was the painting itself. The painting was not flowers, it was a person in a painting. Which sounds obvious, but it isn't. Most paintings are not." She waited. "I want to marry you," he said. "I want to marry you and watch you become whatever you are going to become as a painter. and I want it to be my good fortune to be in the vicinity of that. I am aware that what I am asking is not straightforward. I am asking anyway, because I have run out of patience with waiting for the correct moment." She had stopped walking. "Nathaniel," she said. "Yes." "If we are to do this," she said, "I need you to understand that I am not a thing to be managed, even with good intentions. The letter was a kindness and a presumption, and I am grateful and angry, and both things will sometimes be true at once." "I know," he said. "I will be wrong about things. I will probably think I know what you need before you tell me, and occasionally I will be right about it, and that will be the most infuriating case." The corner of his mouth moved. "I am asking you to correct me when I am wrong. That seems equitable." She looked at him, the bare trees, the cold light. "Yes," she said. "Yes, you understand the terms, or—" "Yes," she said. "I will marry you, Nathaniel, and you are going to spend the rest of your life being corrected about things, and that is what you are asking for, so don't look surprised when it happens." He laughed, the real one, and took her face in both hands and kissed her there in the Sydney Gardens in the November cold, which was not in front of a painting and was possibly better. Philippa came to call 2 days after the news spread, correctly, which was its own statement, with the baronet and a very controlled expression. "My brother has made his decision," she said. "I will not be unreasonable about it." "That is generous," Cordelia said. Philippa looked at her with the measuring look of a woman recalculating. "You are not what I expected," she said. "People keep telling me that," Cordelia said pleasantly. A silence. "The paintings at the Academy," Philippa said. "I heard the report." "Exceptional," Cordelia said. "That was the word used." Something in Philippa shifted very slightly. Not warmth exactly. Revision, a woman updating her arithmetic. "My brother has good taste," she said. "In most things," Cordelia agreed. Then Philippa said, with a formality that was also almost a question, "I hope you will be happy." "I intend to be," Cordelia said. It was not a resolution, but it was a beginning, and Cordelia had learned that beginnings were enough to work with. They were married in April, in Bath, in the church near the lower town where Cordelia had been going since she was 12. Her mother wept. Lucy stood beside her and did not weep, but came very close to it. Nathaniel said the words, with the directness he brought to everything, and looked at her through the whole ceremony with the expression she had finally fully named, certainty. She wore green, not the London dress, a new one, deeper, made by the best dressmaker in Bath, which Nathaniel had not suggested, and she had chosen for herself. Mrs. Pemberton said afterward that the dress was exceptional. Mrs. Pemberton patted her hand and said, "Your father would have been exceedingly pleased," which was exactly what she had said in the pump room in December, and Cordelia thought about her father and the watering can in after, and the garden he had never seen, and was very briefly not composed. "Are you all right?" Nathaniel said quietly beside her. "Perfectly," she said. "Don't look at me for a moment." He looked at the room obediently. She recovered herself and touched his arm, and he looked back. "Right," she said. "I'm right." "I know," he said. She kept the studio. This had not been in doubt. Nathaniel had not suggested otherwise, but he had added it to the household accounts as a matter of course, which meant the rent came from the Charnwood purse rather than her sales. She told him she had noticed. "Good," he said. "I was wondering if you'd noticed." "I always notice," she said. "I know," he said. "That's why I didn't mention it." She pointed her brush at him. "That is very nearly managing." "It is entirely managing," he said. "I also knew you would have rejected a conversation about it, so I didn't have one." "Nathaniel." "Cordelia, if you manage around me by predicting my responses—" "I will stop," he said, "or I will try. Those are different things." He picked up the brush she'd put down and handed it back to her. "Tell me when I do it." "I will tell you constantly." "I'm prepared for constantly," he said, and kissed her, paint hands and all, and she let him. The new painting was large, an exterior, a street she had found in the lower town, the morning light coming through an arch in a garden wall and landing on the opposite building with the clean quality of 8 o'clock in October. No people in it. But you knew there had been people. A shawl left on the step, a book left open on a garden bench, a lantern that hadn't been brought in. She called it Morning After and liked the title immediately. Nathaniel came to the studio on Thursdays as before. He asked questions or didn't. She answered or didn't. The only difference was that on the way home they were walking to the same house, One Thursday in June, he stood in front of Morning After for a long time. "Someone came home last night," he said, "and hasn't been outside yet." She looked at the painting. "That's one reading." "What's the other?" "Someone left last night," she said, "and didn't take everything." He turned and looked at her and said, "Flowers, nothing more," in the exact dry tone she had used at the Academy Gallery, and she laughed properly, the way she had been laughing more since April, and he crossed the studio and kissed her, and the Thursday light fell across Morning After, and didn't settle anything about whether the person was coming or going. She thought that was probably correct. Their daughter was born on the 4th of March 1812, in the Royal Crescent House, on a morning that was trying to decide between rain and frost, and settled on both simultaneously. Cordelia was not, she informed anyone who came near her, in the mood for weather commentary. She was named Frances, after Cordelia's father's sister, who had been the most direct person in 3 counties. Frances Cavendish, 4th of March, 7 pounds and 3 ounces, with her father's eyes and, Cordelia was relieved to observe, her own hands. "She has very small fists," Nathaniel said, looking at his daughter with the expression of a man who has encountered something completely outside his previous experience and is managing it through attention. "She is a very small person," Cordelia said, "as yet." He looked at Cordelia, then at Frances, then at Cordelia again. "Well?" he said. "Well," she said. "Mrs. Pemberton sent flowers. Lucy came the next morning and held Frances for 20 minutes with the careful confidence of a doctor's daughter and said, 'She has your chin.' And Cordelia said, 'I know, poor thing.' And they both laughed, which Frances apparently found interesting, because she opened her eyes. Philippa came in the 2nd week. She held the baby with less confidence than Lucy, and more than she would have admitted, and she said, 'She is quite perfect,' which was the most unstinting thing Cordelia had ever heard her say, and Cordelia said, 'She is, isn't she?' without false modesty, and they sat together for the first time without anything between them that needed managing. She went back to the studio in April, not to the rented room which she'd given up in January, but to the larger room on the ground floor of the Crescent House that Nathaniel had converted without telling her. She had come downstairs one morning in March to find the north-facing wall partially replastered and the window enlarged. "This is the managing conversation you thought I'd refuse," she said. "Yes," he said, "and you predicting I'd refuse it." "And doing it anyway," he said, "because I was certain I was right this time." She looked at the window. The light through it was already better. "You are going to be insufferable about being right." "Only for a short time," he said. "After that I will return to being appropriately humble about the other things." She looked at the room, the north light, the plaster, the possibility. "Thank you," she said, the way she had said it in the gallery in London, meaning it entirely. He said nothing as she had asked him to, but the corner of his mouth moved. She painted through the spring with Frances in a basket near the door. Cordelia worked while the baby slept, set down her brush when she woke, picked it up again. The rhythm of it was different from before, and also not worse. The painting she was making was the best thing she had done since the interior study. It was a portrait, her mother, in the small parlour of the old house, by the window, with her embroidery, looking up, not at Cordelia, at something just past her. The expression on her mother's face was one Cordelia had seen many times and never quite caught. Love, the particular kind that doesn't announce itself, the kind that has been so long in place it looks like ordinary attention. She called it simply her mother. When it was finished, she went downstairs and said, "I need to show you something." Nathaniel stood in front of her mother for 5 minutes. Then he looked at Cordelia. "This is better than the interior," he said. "I know. It should go to the Academy." "I know," she said. "Are you going to make me write another letter?" She pointed at him. He put his hands up. "No letter," he said. "You have Lord Harrington's address, and Fellows will remember you." "Yes," she said, "he will." She sent the letter herself. The Academy accepted her mother for the following spring exhibition and asked whether she had any smaller studies that showed her working method. Mr. Fellows wrote that they were interested in the artist's process as well as her finished work. She sent the window studies from the pump room. From the morning Nathaniel had appeared beside her and said, "You are drawing the windows and not the people." She framed them herself. Their son was born in November of 1814. He was named Thomas for her father, and he arrived on a Tuesday with considerably more urgency than his sister, and considerably less interest in maintaining anyone's composure, including his own. He had Cordelia's colouring and Nathaniel's hands and his grandmother's expression of someone who has opinions and intends to share them. Frances, 2½, inspected him with the gravitas of a small person who has been told something important is happening and wishes to assess it herself. "Baby," she said. "Thomas," Cordelia said. "Baby," Frances said, with the certainty of someone who has reached a conclusion. Nathaniel crouched beside Frances at the level of her eyes. "He is your brother. You should learn his name." Frances considered this, then, "Baby Thomas." "That will do," Nathaniel said. Cordelia, from the bed with Thomas in her arms, looked at the two of them beside her. Nathaniel grave and gentle at his daughter's level, Frances with her father's stillness and her mother's watchfulness. And she thought about the painting she was going to make of this. Not yet. The image needed to settle, but it was there, waiting, the way images waited. Lucy married in the spring of 1815, a physician from Bristol, who had exactly the right combination of intelligence and bewilderment that Lucy required from a husband, and Cordelia painted her wedding present, a small study of Lucy's hands at the piano, which Lucy had played since childhood. Lucy wept when she saw it. Then she said, "If you ever tell anyone I wept over a painting, I will deny it." "You have been denying things for years," Cordelia said. "You're excellent at it." "I've had good instruction," Lucy said, which was the nicest thing she had ever said about Cordelia's social composure. The Academy Spring Exhibition of 1815 opened in London in late April. Cordelia went up with Nathaniel, and Frances and Thomas were left with their grandmother, who expressed enormous happiness about this by saying it was perfectly convenient, and she did not mind at all. Her mother was on the north wall, between a large classical composition and a seascape that Cordelia could tell from 6 feet away was technically excellent and emotionally absent. Her mother was neither large nor classical. It was the small parlour in the old house, and the woman in it was a merchant's widow in her 60s, with embroidery in her hands and love on her face. The private view was the same as before, the noise, the movement, the opinions being performed. But Cordelia moved differently through it now. She had been here before. The city was still on fire, but she knew where the exits were. She heard, "Exceptional." She heard, "How does she do it?" The light. She heard from a man she did not know, to the woman beside him. That face. Have you ever seen an expression caught so exactly? She did not look for Nathaniel. She knew he was in the room the way she knew where the north light was, not by looking but by the feeling of it. When she found him, he was standing in front of her mother. With a glass he was not drinking, reading the expression on the painted face with the same attention he had given the dog Roses in October of 1810. She came to stand beside him. Her mother, the parlour, the embroidery, that look. "It's the best thing you've done," he said. "Not for long," she said. He turned and looked at her, and the expression on his face was not the certainty of 2 years ago, or the surprised not surprised of 5 years ago. It was something that had been laid down over time, slowly, in layers, until it became something that looked as if it had always been there. She took his hand. "Come and look at the seascape," she said. "It's technically excellent and completely empty, and I want to talk about why." He followed her. She could feel him smiling. They went back to the collection on Wimpole Street, the friend again not in residence, the same arrangement holding, and she stood in front of the small Vermeer again, the woman reading a letter by a window, the light on her face. "What do you think it says?" Nathaniel said. "The letter." She had not thought about this in 1811 when they'd been here. She'd thought about the light. "Something expected," she said. "Something she's been waiting for." "Good or terrible?" She looked at the woman's face. Both, depending on what she'd hoped. He was quiet. "You should paint a letter," he said. "Not the light this time, the face." She looked back at the painting, the woman, the angled letter, the light that was incidental to the thing it illuminated. "Flowers," she said. He looked at her. "Nothing more," she said, and smiled. He took her hand right there in the gallery on Wimpole Street and said, "Everything," and she thought, yes, that is the better word. She began the letter painting in October of 1815 in the north-facing studio on the ground floor of the Crescent House. Frances, nearly 4, sat on the floor beside the easel with a piece of chalk and paper, drawing with the concentration of a person who has decided this is serious work. Thomas, not yet one, was asleep in the basket by the door. Cordelia looked at her rough sketch and thought about what she was reaching for. A woman, a letter, a face at the moment of knowing. She picked up her brush. She was afraid of it, the way she was always afraid at the beginning. By the third day she would be angry, and the anger would carry her through. She made the first mark. "Mama," said Frances, looking up from her chalk, "what is it?" "I don't know yet," she said. "The painting will tell me." Frances accepted this with the equanimity of a child for whom this was a perfectly normal thing for a mother to say. She returned to her chalk. Outside, Bath was doing what Bath did in October, beginning to prepare for winter, the leaves off the trees, the light going early. In the pump room, someone was probably exchanging information. In the assembly rooms, someone was preparing an opinion. In a drawing room she did not need to name, someone might still be saying, easily without thinking, that she painted flowers. Let them. She had the north light and a blank canvas, and a family asleep and awake around her, and she had work to do, and she turned back to it.